Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by thanking Science Impact and its director, Nick Brake, for inviting me to speak in front of all of you, all these distinguished specialists, academics, experts, and advocates, on a theme that is very important for my organization, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Gender equality and STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and sometimes we also add arts and design, so it becomes STEAM. STEM and gender equality is also very close to my heart. I really want to congratulate the organizers of this conference. It's very timely, and the range of issues that will be covered is truly impressive. I look forward to hearing the many interventions, as many as I can, and learn from different experiences. In the time that I have, I will try to talk about gender equality and STEM, drawing on UNESCO experience, an experience which comes from having 193 member states where we work. And I will try to identify some successes, but also key challenges, and some of the ways, some of the initiatives UNESCO has to address those challenges. First, let me say a few words about UNESCO for those of you who are not familiar with our organization. UNESCO is founded on the idea that peace, to be lasting, must be built in the minds of women and men through education, through the sciences, culture, communication, and information. Those are the areas where we work. Gender equality lies at the heart of UNESCO's work. UNESCO's 193 member states voted in 2007 to make gender equality one of two global priorities of the organization. The other priority is Africa. Now, this enables us to integrate gender equality into everything we do, into all of our areas, including the sciences. And in my view, it enables us to see the connections between different areas. Just to give you a few examples, we see the connection between education and economic empowerment. We work on the connection between climate change and violence against women. We also try to look into different elements of the connection between science, technology, and women's empowerment. As we all know, the international commitment to gender equality goes back to 1948, to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It has since then been reinforced through different conventions and conferences and mechanisms, including the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1979, and the Beijing Declaration in 1995. More recently, the adoption of Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development in 2015 by the international community has strengthened our resolve to achieve gender equality not only as a basic human right, but also as a key to accelerating sustainable development. When we look back, we see that we have made a lot of progress in addressing gender inequalities in many areas of action, from education and health to access to resources and decision-making. Yet, despite all these achievements, we still face significant gender gaps in many areas, and one of these areas is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is the subject matter of this gathering. As we reach for gender equality in the future, and the future is now 2030, that's the target date we have as the international community, gaps persist in the present. I want to tell you a little bit about gaps in education because I think this is the foundation and it also tells us the amount of work we need to do to get to STEM from there. Education is fundamental. Education is the very foundation. Education opens doors. It plays a vital role in our lives. It allows us to access better livelihoods. improved health, and expanded opportunities. It empowers people, especially women, to take active roles in their communities and to build more secure futures for their families. It is true that we have made a lot of progress in education in the last 20 years, but there is also important gaps. And I just want to give you a few examples because I don't know if you have heard about them. According to UNESCO data, we do a lot of research on education. According to our data, only 2/3 of the countries for which we have data have achieved gender parity in primary education. That's the first 5 years of education, only 2/3 of countries. And when we look at secondary education, this drops to 1/3. 1/3 of countries for which we have data have achieved gender parity in secondary education. According to our estimates, for girls in most remote rural areas in sub-Saharan Africa, they have to wait until 2086 so that all of them are enrolled in school. That is 70 years from now, and I think none of us will be alive by then. Today, there are over 60 million children of school age who are not in school, boys and girls are the majority. And again, according to our estimates, many of them will never set foot in a formal classroom during their lifetime. This is because of conflicts. This is because of large-scale human displacements as a result of factors such as climate change. As the world experiences more conflicts and more effects from climate change and other phenomena, the numbers are going to increase. When we look at adult illiteracy, the findings are even more alarming. In 2014, there were 750 million adults in the world who did not know how to read and write, who did not have basic literacy skills. 2/3 of this number is women. What is more alarming is that in the last 20 years, this percentage of women, adult illiterates, has not changed, despite the fact that the world has been engaged in literacy programs around the globe. So when we know these numbers, when we know that there are all these problems at primary and secondary level, and we have these literacy problems with adults, I think the chances of having more girls studying STEM and more women working in STEM-related fields get more difficult. So I just wanted to give you the context. But now back to STEM. UNESCO is a specialized agency with the sciences as one of its core programs. And our message about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is very loud and clear. The world needs science, and science needs women. This is the slogan we have. Given the challenges we have today, many of which require science and technology to provide part of the answer, from climate change to biodiversity, and even to combating extremism and radicalization, this has never been truer. At UNESCO, we do believe that creating knowledge and understanding through science will allow us to find solutions to today's acute economic, social, and environmental challenges. In this context, science cannot continue to deprive itself of the full scientific potential of over half of the planet's population. With the gender gap in STEM, we are missing a precious talent pool if women are not fully represented in science and technology. Now, that there is a gender gap in STEM is not contested. It is a fact. How does this gap present itself? Let me give you some examples. First, there is a problem in engaging girls in science and technology-related fields. This starts at school. They appear to lose motivation to study these disciplines as they grow older. UNESCO research has revealed that gender differences in STEM fields begins not in the labor market, not in higher education, but in the classroom at primary and secondary levels, especially secondary levels. Even when there is no doubt about girls' performance, they simply seem to feel as confident as boys. Research has shown that even when girls perform as well as boys, say in mathematics, they are less motivated. They have less confidence in their own abilities and more anxiety. Whereas boys are more likely to blame their own failure on external factors, girls are more likely to blame themselves. Early input, therefore, seems vital. Encouragement from parents, but also from teachers, is critical. UNESCO research has shown that teachers call less on girls in science-related topics than on boys. So the first area of action for UNESCO is how to redress this situation. That is why UNESCO has been advocating for specific measures to stimulate girls' interest in science and technology disciplines, either through policy measures or encouraging more gender-responsive approaches in the classroom. We have been working on reducing gender bias in educational materials. We have been working on promoting quality education, increasing the number of female teachers to act as role models, sensitizing educators to promote a positive image of women in science, and encouraging schools to provide appropriate careers guidance to girls interested in science careers. Let me mention a few specific projects. Recently, we launched a public-private partnership entitled Teach Her, which targets secondary school teachers, school administrators, and ministry officials. We have piloted this program in Africa with 6 countries and in Central America with 8 countries last year in 2016. We will do a second pilot in the same regions with an increased number of participants and countries, and the aim is to develop a master corps of teachers at secondary level that will be able to replicate and train other teachers in their countries on how to teach science-related topics to girls in secondary level, because that's where the problem begins. Another specific project we have is called the Global Partnership for Girls and Women's Education, which was launched in 2011. Again, we work with governments, the private sector, and the local groups to allow quality education at the secondary level in order to prevent many of the problems girls face in the countries where these programs are implemented, from early marriage to early pregnancy. So this program also has a very strong STEM and ICT component. Last but not least, our most recent effort is UNESCO's first international symposium and policy forum entitled Cracking the Code, Girls' Education in STEM, which will take place from 28 to 30 August 2017 this year in Bangkok, Thailand. This event aims to make the case for strengthening girls' education in STEM and will serve as a platform to present latest findings from research and practice. It aims to facilitate dialogue and to promote collaboration and experience sharing among participants. We also have a report on the same topic, which explores the root causes that disadvantage girls in STEM and presents examples put in place in different parts of the world to reverse the situation. This report will be launched during the event in Bangkok. If you wish to learn more about this event and how to participate, in case you would like to, please check it out on the UNESCO website. We also have a poster in the main area, in the exhibition area. And one of my colleagues from the organizing group is here, so you can also approach her and she can give you more information. Now, using new technologies for education is an exciting avenue already being explored by UNESCO to provide an opportunity to address gender inequalities in education. I want to tell you about our project in Afghanistan, which is combining classroom teaching with mobile technologies to reach the girls between the ages of 15 and 24, and that is the hardest group to reach in some of the countries for different education purposes, including STEM education. I also want to give you another example, and this is a story. As we started with stories this morning, maybe you will allow me to tell you a story. It's about a literacy program in Senegal, and it's about UNESCO's work using technology in education, which brought me to Senegal, to a very remote part in the northern area of Senegal a few years ago. So I went to visit the UNESCO project, Literacy Through Mobile Technology, and I met several people, but one really stood out, and I keep thinking about her. Her name was Rokeya. She had no education. She had been married off very young, as is the practice in those parts. When I met her, she looked like she was in her 40s, and she was already a grandmother. She told me her story. When her husband was forced to move to the urban area, to Dhaka, to find work, she wanted to be able to communicate with him, but she did not want to ask the village elders who usually perform this function for the village people. She bought a phone, a mobile phone that we don't see in the West anymore. It was one of the early models. And she thought that she could use this mobile phone to talk to her husband. But then she quickly found out that calling was very expensive from this rural area to Dakar, but texting was free. She didn't know how to read and write. So she enrolled in this UNESCO program for literacy. And using her mobile phone, she quickly learned how to read, how to write, how to do simple arithmetic, and she gained some IT skills. Not only was she able to use this phone to text with her husband, but she was now providing this service to other women in the village. And she could help her children, which was the part that made her most proud. She could help her children and her grandchildren with their schoolwork. Seeing her tell me this story about her accomplishments and her newly elevated status in her village is something I will really never forget. We both had tears in our eyes as she showed me her skills by composing a message to her husband right there and there, telling him about the meeting with me. So the technology helped her learn to read. It compelled her to become literate. It also empowered Rokeya. It changed the way she was perceived by her community, by the village elders who were now consulting her on important topics concerning the village. It likely changed the way she was perceived by her husband, but most importantly, it definitely changed the way she perceived herself. So the message here is that technology holds the potential to empower women in countless ways. It has the power to transform women's lives by providing them with access to education, information, support networks, employment opportunities, avenues for political participation, and devices and apps that can improve personal safety. Ladies and gentlemen, the other theme that will be explored here in the course of 2 days is women's underrepresentation in STEM employment, and more importantly, in STEM sectors with expanding job potentials and opportunities. Now, we always talk about women not having access to decent jobs, not having access to jobs with good pay. So this is a very important issue in the area of STEM. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, it is estimated that 2.5 million engineers and technicians are needed to improve access to clean water and sanitation, a sector that heavily influences the lives of women and girls. In 25 countries combined, it is estimated that women and girls spend about 16 million hours daily collecting water. Yet, they have little say in decisions over how water and sanitation resources are managed and improved, and how investments are made in scientific and technological infrastructure and solutions. In the United States, the Department of Labor estimates that there will be more than 1.4 million computer-related job openings by 2020, only 3 years from now. With current graduation rates, only 30% of those positions could be filled. Girls remain a precious and largely untapped talent pool. When we look at the percentage of women in scientific careers, in research institutions, in universities, according to latest UNESCO research, we find that only 29% are women, and even lower percentages at higher decision-making levels. I know that this is one of the issues that will be discussed at length, but I just wanted to touch upon that fact. Now, when we say 29% globally, of course, this hides regional differences. Allow me to give you some figures from different regions. Surprisingly, women researchers are better represented in the Arab world, where 37% of researchers are women. Then in South Asia, where only 17% are women. The figures go up to 47% in Latin America, and they go down to 9% in sub-Saharan Africa. So on the whole, women constitute a minority in the research world. They also tend to have more limited access to funding than men, and to be less represented in prestigious universities and among senior faculty, which puts them at a further disadvantage in high-impact publishing and access to research funds. As I mentioned, there are sessions on this, so I won't go into details. I want to move now to some of the reasons for the gender gap in STEM-related areas. And I want to mention 3. The first one is unconscious bias and stereotypes. Research, again UNESCO research, has shown that as little girls and boys grow up, a sense of what they should be doing or not doing does have a very real impact on their confidence and motivation in the STEM subjects. A biologist, a woman biologist, Jenny Rohn, when she talked about the reasons for the absence of women or the gap for women at the top of her field, she's a biologist, I think I mentioned that, points to the role prejudices play when she says, picture a scientist in your head. Just picture it. The image will likely be a male. We're just wired that way. But this picture in our heads of a man, and usually it's an absent-minded and eccentric-looking man, as the only noteworthy scientist, does not reflect reality. It is a myth. Unfortunately, this myth is perpetuated in many different ways. Allow me to tell you another story. As late as 2013, this is only 4 years ago, the very prestigious New York Times published an obituary for a woman by the name of Yvonne Brill. Maybe you know this name. The obituary began, and I quote, "She made a mean beef stroganoff. She followed her husband from job to job, and she took 8 years off from work to raise her 3 children." Now, until here, you might wonder why there's an obituary in the New York Times for this woman who sounds like a very well-appreciated wife and mother. It's only in the second paragraph that we find out the reason for the obituary. Yvonne Brill was also a brilliant rocket scientist who invented a propulsion system to keep communications satellites in orbit. This is a technology that we use widely and globally today without ever wondering about who invented it. I think most of us have seen the recent Hollywood movie, The Hidden Figures. It tells another story which is similar. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of women scientists whose work benefits us all today, but whose names even the scientific journals do not mention. The unconscious bias and gender stereotypes keep us believing in myths. We do not speak of male scientists this way. We don't wonder about their marital status, the number of children they have, or the household chores they are good at. But we think about women scientists. I had several other examples, but I will pass, because I want to talk about the second reason for the gap. And the second area is work-life balance. We talk a lot about it, but we have done very little about it until now. According to a 2010 study, American women scientists do twice as many household chores as their male partners and take on childcare responsibilities. So inequalities in science, as in business, in politics, are connected with inequalities at home. An unequal division of labor within the household, whereby women frequently carry a heavier responsibility for housework and child-rearing, has an impact on the way they do their jobs. They probably have less time to allocate to professional development and career advancement. These responsibilities may also require women to temporarily leave the job market and prioritize their roles in other areas, which impedes field work and travel that are often essential for professional development. So gender equality outside the home requires more attention to be paid to gender equality within the home and a rebalancing of responsibilities in the domestic sphere. Third and final area I want to mention is role models. Getting more girls and women into science and technology requires us to give them the confidence in their own potential in these fields by presenting them with strong role models. Since 1998, the UNESCO L'Oréal Partnership for Women in Science has been celebrating the outstanding contribution that outstanding women scientists have been making to science across the world. In this way, while giving these women scientists the validation and the recognition they deserve, we also hope to inspire the next generation of girls to pursue science careers. So far, we have supported over 300 talented women scientists with fellowships to further their research, as well as creating 47 programs in 111 countries for scholarships, either domestic or international. So to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that gender parity and gender equality in STEM requires us both to engage young girls in science and technology from an early age and to continue to provide an enabling environment to support women as they rise to the top. Three key issues need to be resolved. First, we need to plant the initial seed of interest as soon as possible, ideally in early childhood. Then we need to make a career in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics tangible for girls and women. Finally, we need to nurture women as they grow in their careers and as they continue to rise to the top. In short, we need to provide the right environment in which all girls and women can fulfill their dreams so that they can study STEM, they can rise to the top in STEM-related jobs, just as in any other domain. I'm confident that the sessions today and tomorrow will help us identify the opportunities to shape a future with better representation and voice for girls and women in schools and in STEM professions. And I thank you very much.